You feeling stuck lately? Like life's passing you by? Get to know M.A.Y.A.
Acronym My Ambition, Your Ambition.
Reconnect with your dreams, your goals, your ambitions. Find your motivation and start to live the life you desire. Explore the M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition podcast at M.A.Y.A.com.
Namaste, everyone. Welcome to episode 52 of M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition. This is another special delivery, so we're going right into the M.A.Y.A mail, virtual mailbag. I've gotten some virtual mail, aka email from people. And I figured, you know what, there's 4 good ones. It's worth making an episode out of. And I really felt the things that people ask, I know other people probably have had these same questions, issues, or concerns. So I figured, why not make it another episode? So of course, always welcome. You know how we do things here. This podcast is focused on you, focusing on your mental wellness. One of my primary objectives moving forward for the rest of 2021 is I want people to know that the conversation about mental wellness needs to be normalized. It shouldn't be something that we only talk when something goes wrong. We should be talking about it so that we can maybe prevent things from going wrong, just like we don't allow ourselves to become physically unhealthy with, let's say, a heart condition or anything else. Your mental wellness, hence tied to your brain and emotions, should be looked at the same way. So we look here to take that salient topic about mental wellness, and we want to pull back that veil of self-doubt and self-sabotage that honestly plagues every single one of us at some point of our lives. But the key thing we want to do here is to help you to identify what it is that you want to be happy and to find that motivation in order to yield that satisfaction, to have it in your everyday life. We're not lofty here. This whole, especially I said for 2021, with people dealing with the pandemic, I want you to think about mental wellness as a daily activity, daily goal, not long-term. We're talking about this on a daily scale. And a lot of people don't often think that way. So if you are a first-time listener or viewer, well, welcome aboard. Buckle up for safety, because occasionally it can be an unexpected bumpy ride. Not that this is not a safe space, but the thing is, maybe I'll say something that really kind of hits home with you and you really kind of go, wow, I never thought about it like that. That's part of what doing the work is all about. And of course, if you're a returning listener or viewer, well, welcome back. You know how business as usual goes here, how we get down. Grab that pencil, paper, grab your beverage of choice. For me, it's coffee. I'm also hydrating with some water. Grab a pen and a paper so you can maybe jot down a thought you might have through the course of working through the episode. Now, remember, there's a rule we have here at M.A.Y.A. This podcast works at your pace. It's about your discovery. It's about how you're going to process things. So if you're back in episode 35, because there's a whole 52 of them now, that's okay. Work at your time frame. But the key thing is, if you're front and center right now, this next 60 minutes is all about you. So get comfortable and let's dive into some of these virtual letters. Like I said, I guarantee you, of these 4 letters, somewhere you're going to be like, yeah, I probably have experienced that. Or, oh, I might have a little bit of that going on right now. Either way, it's always meant to be beneficial. Before we dive into, obviously, our letters, we got to do our housekeeping things. I can already see people are checking into the show. So just like, let's see who's already checked into the show. Oh, of course, we've got Roburn, who is in Hawaii. Aloha to you as well. Always checking in. Brandy Harris, she's a local person. Thank you for tuning in as well. She's always so inspirational to me to make me think about things like, maybe I should address that. I don't really think about things sometimes, but my episodes always lead to other episodes or conversations I have with people, not even necessarily my clients that I work with. Leads me to kind of create these different episodes. I want them to be front and center. So just like Brandy said, hey, M.A.Y.A, you too can get involved in the conversation. Just type a comment into the Facebook or YouTube page. And just like that, I'll click on it and share it like, here's Armando Jr. Hey, follow me from the other side of what I do, the Sports Zone Chicago. Hopefully you were intact with that too. Yes, thank you. He said, bravo on your amazing interview with Eric Kramer. I am going to share that interview here probably next week. We did this fantastic interview with Eric Kramer, who was a former NFL quarterback, specifically for the Bears, as well as the Lions. And there's one other team I'm forgetting right now, maybe the Chargers. And he really had a very interesting story. People heard more about Eric Kramer besides that one phenomenal season with the Bears, and we loved him and wanted him to stay. He was one of the most competent quarterbacks the Bears have ever had. But his life after football took a very interesting turn where he tried to take his life, and he failed at it. And from there, his story is unique, but even before he got to that point, it's what led up to it. The loss of his son, who overdosed, and then his parents dying pretty much like back to back. just a lot of tumultuous things that led him to a place that he said, I don't remember being there, but there I was. Great interview. I promise you, I'm going to share it next week. And I'm actually going to reach out to Eric and ask him if he'll be on my show so we can really talk about the mental health side of it, moving beyond just the conversation about the attempt on his life, because he said a lot of things in that interview that I think people need to hear. And it was human. And I'm going to tell you something. It takes courage. It literally takes courage to step into the light and to be as vulnerable as he was in that interview. And I was looking at him like, I got some work to do, because he made me feel very vulnerable. Like, there's some things that I really struggle with. Yes, even the therapist struggles with things. But his truth made me say, this is exactly why I do the work that I do with myself and why I want you to do the work with you. So Armando, thank you for tuning in. And, I'm glad you caught that Eric Kramer interview. Vernon, thank you for checking as well. I might have to wait until August of 2020 for a session with Maya, since, well, I'm only booked online, in my private practice. That's different. But anyways, but thank you for tuning in. I love everybody who really supports all my different endeavors. You may know the sports side of Maya, which is interesting, versus obviously this new mental health thing for some people is new. They don't know me in this capacity, but this is what I've been doing for the last 20 years. So I've been moonlighting as a sports person. But anyways, love the support. Either way, everybody, thank you for, tuning in. So you can join the conversation that way. Remember, hopefully you can catch all former episodes of Maya. Just go to M.A.Y.A and then boom, all the episodes are right there. Often with every episode, I will give you podcast companions, which means things that I think can give the conversation in this particular episode a bit more depth. So you just go to M.A.Y.A, click on the podcast resource tab, and you can scroll down to episode 52. And I'll have some additional things that I think were worthy of including in the conversation. Hopefully by now you have subscribed to my YouTube channel. Subscribe, like, and share. That's really key. I may not say something that may have value to you in the moment, but there's a high probability there could be someone in your life, if you randomly share it on your page, that might go, okay. Because it's amazing how so many people have no one to lean into. They have no voice. They don't know about self-advocacy. And they're just kind of in this place where they're unhappy and they're living in silence and they're suffering. So maybe this isn't for you today. I guarantee you at some point it will be. And if it doesn't, that's even better. But like, subscribe, and share my YouTube page. Of course, same thing with my podcast. You can find me on so many other podcast platforms. I'm on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Google, iHeartRadio, Amazon Audible, Spotify. So whatever your podcast platform of choice is, just search Maya. And you might have to do the M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition, because especially when you go on YouTube, if you type M.A.Y.A, all this Japanese anime is going to come up first, and boom, there's me. But you'll find me. And of course, by now, everybody, I hope you've gotten social with me, which means you were following me on Instagram and Twitter at Maya_Akai, Facebook, M.A.Y.A Presents. Okay, we did all of our housekeeping things about how you can get connected with the show and share it with others who might need an enlightening moment. Now, what do we do every single show if you are a returning listener or viewer? We open up our toolbox, which always should be open every morning when you work out. And this is the first thing you take out of your Maya toolbox. It's the one tool I say is the most important tool. You reach in when you wake up in the morning, you open it up, and you take out your emotional intelligence. And we all know it's that ability to perceive, evaluate, and control your emotions. But the perception part is really important about others. Remember that I talked about the objectivity IQ? I am working on an episode with that because I threw a Maya-ism out there and I said, well, wait a minute. I have to give people a way to understand, what does it mean to have an objectivity IQ and how do you use it in your toolbox? So I'm working on that episode as well because I created the idea and then I realized I had to give you a bit more groundwork and kind of some things to work with if you were going to use it. But we always, always, always take out our EI every single day. And of course, just like in this episode, you can write me a virtual letter. All you have to do, which is AKA an email, just me being fancy. If you have something, you have a question, or whether it's about an episode or maybe came across something somebody posted on Facebook or you're going through something, you can always drop me a virtual letter like these 4 people did, and I will respond to your letter. So all you pretty much have to do is just go send me an email, AKA a virtual letter, to getinspired@mayaakai.com. So like I said, if it's got you thinking, reflecting, you're navigating a difficult situation, or as it says in my intro, if you're just feeling stuck, then of course, send me a virtual letter and I'm going to sometimes have to respond back to people to ask questions to get a bit more information about what they're asking me so I can make sure I can answer the question correctly. And then if it's truly worthy, I may make an entire episode out of it, out of one letter, because sometimes it's worthy. Or if I get several that I think, oh, I can cram all of these into one episode and it's going to be good, then I'll do that. So you too can get into the virtual mailbag. Just send me an email to getinspired@mayakai.com. And you never know, your letter might be featured on the show. Okay. So we've done all that housekeeping stuff. This is episode, 52. And it's important because a lot of people often, and actually I was going to reshare 51 because episode 51 is what the first letter is actually based on. So I'll put it back up, 51 was the truth begins with you, the role of honesty with yourself. And actually, this particular first letter that came through was really based on that particular episode. So in episode 52, like I said, we're opening up the mailbags and we've got some burning questions. Some people are feeling challenged with honesty. Other people are dealing with criticism. So those are only two of the letters that we address in the first half of the show. And we have two additional letter AA questions in the second half of the show. So let's jump right into virtual letter number 1. And it came from Mr. Feeling Challenged with Honesty. And like I said, this was tied to episode 51, which was last week. This is what he wrote in his letter to me. So I'll put it on the screen and I'll read it to you as well. Hey, Maya, love the show. Kudos are always, accepted, by the way. Anyways, those kind of compliments and favor will probably get your letter on the show. Totally joking. It's got nothing to do with anything. Last week's episode was one of the things I struggle with when trying to be the best version of myself. I feel like admitting my shortcomings, mistakes, and weaknesses make me a failure. I feel the negative things in my life define me more than the positive ones. If I'm going to be honest with myself, I don't feel I will have the courage to pull back the veil of self-doubt and sabotage that you speak of and close it back due to how disappointing self-reflection might be. Help feeling challenged with being honest with myself. Okay. I'm going to tell you something. Rather that person realizes and not who sent me that email. You actually already started being honest with yourself because you admitted that you are struggling with being honest with yourself. And that's the first thing. Sometimes people don't understand. They're already doing the work before they're doing the work. So I want to bring a couple elements into the show from last week into the show this week, because I think when you put things respectfully in a framework, it helps you to process them a little bit easier. I am I am guilty of being a compartmentalizer. I take everything and separate it out. Emotions, thoughts, so then I can process things individually. I cannot process things in lump sums. I cannot. I will not. I feel I do better at managing my emotions and what I think when I actually pull things apart and look at them. I suppose it's an analytical part of me that has to be able to, for something that is not tangible, then I have to find a way to be able to make it functional for evaluation. So for me, I am a compartmentalizer because of that. But there was the key thing about episode 51, about the truth begins with you, being honest with yourself. Here's what I want you to understand. And I'm going to put this back on the screen. The things you have to define about honesty. What exactly is a lie? And these are straight, just definitions from Webster's, but they're spot on. I think if people start functioning and understanding things from the core and the simplistic way they are meant to be understood and not the way that social narratives or personal narratives have put them into play, you may be able to process things a little bit easier. So a lie is as simple as this: an assertion that is believed to be false, typically used with the purpose of deceiving someone, versus the truth is that which is true and in accordance with fact or reality. Now, I said last week, and I'm going to say it again, this is where people get themselves into trouble. Because that part about in accordance with fact or reality, either people will throw out facts because it does not align with what they believe is their reality, opposed to what reality really is. And then when you really can't put into context what has really happened because you have muddied the waters with what you believe is your facts, now you have a problem. If you are that person, you've got some work to do. If you're dealing with that person, things just got more complicated if it is a high value relationship to you. Now, that was an episode, I can't remember, maybe it was around 49 or 50, I can't remember. But no, it was 49, I think. I'm going to tell you something. The conversation about high value relationships, that high value is now kind of like a buzzword, but it's important for you to be able to prioritize relationships, because the energy you put into something should be based upon the value that the relationship actually has to you. And a lot of times we just throw value all over the place and we wonder why we're spread thin. So a lie, the reason it can be so dominant and it's so easy for people to do is because people have a hard time operating from a position of truth and fact and reality. Hence, here comes a lie. So when you're working with yourself about being honest, this is where that objectivity IQ kind of conversation I came in, my M.A.Y.A I created, where you really have to start to step back and be realistic about a situation, which I always tell people the best way to be realistic about a situation is you have to take your emotion out of it. Because if you're dealing in emotion, chances are you're not going to be able to deal in fact and reality, because emotions tend to cloud your judgment. And what's our big thing we're working here in M.A.Y.A? We're working on responding and not reacting, which means you're going to have to sometimes say, excuse me, anger, I'm going to need you to sit in the back right now because you're really distorting what I'm trying to do right now. You're about to make me act up, act a fool, and then I'm going to have to go back and do extra work. Go have a seat. Put anger in timeout. So when you feel you're getting warm, there's always those physiological symptoms. You know when anger is creeping up on you. You start to get like a little warm. You can feel it. It just has all these different kind of physical responses. That's when you have to say, I'm becoming angry. Excuse me, I'm gonna put you in timeout, which might mean you have to put you in timeout. Go take a walk, go get a drink of water and be like, I need to excuse myself right now because this is something that's really impacting me and I need to reflect appropriately. I'm gonna excuse myself. And if someone doesn't like it, I'm sorry. It's better to excuse yourself and make better choices than to stay present and make poor choices or make a fool of yourself. And most people struggle with that. You know, here's some food for thought when you think about honesty with yourself. Putting truth into action is really what honesty is. So you have the truth, which is fact or reality, acting accordance of that. So what honesty, it's the action-oriented side of truth, and it's not blurring the lines. And some people lack that insight and have no true idea of what being objective means. So when you are objective, you have the ability to be open to perspectives and truth. And you'll realize that truth is not arbitrary. Fact evaluation is a key thing I talked about last week. And I'd have to do a show because another thing I just threw out there. I said, hey, people, you need to be able to do fact evaluation. It's really super important. It's where people often lose their way because they're not being honest with themselves. And fact evaluation says you look at the situation as it happened and you look at the reality of it and you have to take the emotion out and see, is there any possible way this person, based on how they behaved, is it based on something? What happened? Like, what was the event? What made the event happen? And then what was the outcome? Fact evaluation is one of the key things you have to put in your toolbox. So now I know if I can't get Eric Kramer on next week to have that interview, which was fantastic, then maybe for sure next week will be about having that objective IQ and what fact evaluation looks like. So then you can use these tools when you're dealing with trying to be honest with yourself. Because this is often where we fall short. So let's have a real talk time moment. Because if you're feeling challenged with being honest with yourself, and let me tell you something, Mr. Feeling Challenged put a lot of things on the table. Everything he encompassed talked about being vulnerable. Like he felt like he's made more mistakes in his life than he has done positive things. And one of the things in the short exchange that we had that I asked, I said, I can't ask you all of, what it is that you feel are shortcomings or mistakes or failures. I want to give you just a little bit of understanding that we all have them. And our biggest growth points come from those moments. So I would ask you, in the midst of your shortcomings, mistakes, and failures, did you step back and did you gain any insight from them? Because that is how we grow. We don't necessarily grow from our successes. They make us feel good. We poke our chest out. We pat ourselves on the back, and then we let those moments kind of move away. But you notice when you make a mistake or you have a shortcoming or a failure, you tend to marinate in it for too long. And remember I said that emotional marination is totally okay. That was another M.A.Y.A-ism, that I do want you to marinate in your negative emotion for a short period of time, because I want you to remember what it feels like. But then I want you to remember, why did it happen and why you never want to feel that way again, and then you move forward. It's important to address negative emotions as much as it is positive emotions. I know that conversation about emotional marinating was, I think, in the toxic positivity episode. I can't tell you what number that is, but the title was toxic positivity. Another word, listen, I'm not just saying it to say it, but I really believe that people believe you're not going to be sunshine and rainbows and unicorns and cute kittens all the time. I mean, okay, maybe cute kittens, but when you don't have those moments, when you get those hiccups, what do you do with them? And you have to acknowledge why they're actually happening. But let's have a real talk time moment. Let me take a drink of water. Are you afraid of what you think of you or what others think of you? We spend more time being invested what other people think of us than what we actually think of ourselves. And that's why you can't be honest, because you will bend, contort, and do everything except for almost break. And in some cases, people break because they're so worried about what somebody else thinks. Well, at some point, you have to park what other people think and get back in touch with what you think about you and why you think that way of you. And is that narrative or that negative thinking, if it's not positive, where's the root of it? Does it come from your childhood? And what are those failures tied to? Failures are always related to something. You got to ask yourself, when you made your failure, that shortcoming or that mistake, were you at an epic high or were you at an epic low? Let's be honest. If you were in the gutter and the basement and struggling and you were making mistakes, well, guess what? Doesn't that kind of make sense? Because that's where you make mistakes. But it doesn't mean you can't make a mistake when you're riding high either. So you have to evaluate what was going on in your life, and are you in that same place? Because that's part of what we came to with Mr. Challenged. He really hadn't moved far from that position of where all the negative things happened. I was like, well, that's probably why it's going to be really hard to be able to be honest with yourself. I said, but you need to. I said, because this moment right now is the moment that's going to allow you to move forward and to address the things that have kept you in that spot for too long, that has kept you stagnant. Now, mind you, I do have to say this, and I was supposed to say this at the beginning of the show. By no means am I your therapist here, because I'm not. I am your mental wellness advocate. That's it. Putting conversations on the table. And I strongly recommended that person needed to sit down and speak with a counselor or a therapist. I said, I feel like there's some work you can do individually that can really help you pull this apart so that you can feel good about who you are. So nothing here this is not the answer. It's just to get you insight and reflection on, maybe I do need to take that next step and see and talk to someone. Or I think I've just found some things that I need to address with myself. It's high time I do it. But it's not because M.A.Y.A said do it. It's because you've had that aha moment to do it. Everything here at M.A.Y.A, my ambition, your ambition, is aha moments, not advice. As a therapist, we don't give advice. I never tell people what to do, except for go see a therapist. That's the one thing I tell people consistently. I think you need to go talk to somebody. No, it can't be me. Sorry. Go talk to somebody. That's it. That's the only advice that I give. And you may sit in a session and realize that we're never going to give you answers, or we shouldn't. It's about the discovery. We are merely support and tools to help you have good form as the work you're doing yourself. So it's kind of like a personal trainer. So make sure you do the right exercise, the right way to tone or get whatever position you're trying to get to. Therapists are the same thing. It's just a mental. It's like giving you the right form to get to that right emotional state, that right mental state. That's what therapists are. We're like your mental personal trainers. Here comes another M.A.Y.A-ism. There you go. So if you struggle with the idea of calling someone a counselor or a therapist, how about this? You have a mental trainer. Sounds a lot better. And most people are better with it. So go find yourself a mental trainer, an emotional trainer. Okay. So I ask if you're afraid of what you think of you or what others think of you. And if you put others, what they think of you before you put your thoughts before yourself, that's a big thing that you have to work on. Because it's never going to be healthy, and you're never going to make the right decisions, and you're never going to do things right for you if every action you make is only because you want to make sure it's the right action or outcome for others. His response back was, thank you. I never really took the time to reflect on how would I be doing better if I'm not too far off of where I was. Okay, let's move into virtual letter number 2. This read, M.A.Y.A, your podcasts have really helped me with self-reflection, but I find the deeper I go, the more sometimes I feel overwhelmed. Occurrence, I'm not sure which of the experience I've had in the past is criticism. So ultimately, she was speaking of criticism. She was struggling with, I just kind of copied and paste. I probably should have read that better. But I like, hey, keep it in its real form. Keep it true to form. But ultimately, she was saying she struggles with criticism when it's all said and done. And she doesn't know how to do with it. What to do with it, how to deal with it, especially when it comes from people that she respects, that she feels that she has to impress, like in work settings, family members. She said, literally, she just doesn't know what to do with it, even if she feels it isn't right. Because that was my question, like, well, where's the criticism coming from and how is it affecting you? And she said, well, it comes from people that I respect. So for her, it's coming from high value relationships. And it's about her and things that she feels like, I don't know if I can fix this, or I thought this was okay, or now I don't feel good enough, is how the criticism was starting to make her feel. So it's interesting because when we think about criticism, very much like the idea of apologizing, which is another episode, which is somewhere probably in the late 40s, like episode 45 or something, I don't know. You need to think about how you learned and experienced criticism in your early life. So much of the groundwork or of how we function as adults comes from early childhood. And I hate to seem Freudian, Sigmund Freud, which seems like childhood is the source of everything, but real talk, it's definitely a strong influencer and sense of guidance of the adults we become if we never bother to put it in check and evaluate. Now, there are many of us who come from those family backgrounds where being strong, suck it up, don't cry. We kind of come from backgrounds like that. And it doesn't mean that you weren't loved. It just means that maybe how to manage emotions and how to deal with criticism or how to apologize were not necessarily presented to us in a ways that as adults we did better. When you do better when you know better. So as I began to tell people, if you apologize by saying, I'm sorry, you're already doing it wrong because you were taught that way as a child. And that's not what a true apology means. There's something about criticism you have to understand that's very, very similar to that. What's key is that you have to know the difference between criticism, which is the expression of disapproval of someone or something, based on the fact that it's either a fault or a mistake. So you did something and you're being criticized for your action. So that's what a criticism is. And it's usually looked at as being negative. But criticism is not necessarily negative. How you receive it is how you will determine how negative it is for you. But on the flip side, you kind of have the idea of critiquing. And I always say, when you say critiquing, it's kind of like a different way to engage somebody in a difficult conversation, because a critique is a detailed analysis and assessment of something that doesn't put it in terms of good or bad. So especially if you have young adults or children, if you want to talk to them about something that needs work, they're going to see criticism if it comes out negative. But if you say within your language, let's critique something, let's assess, let's analyze what happened. And even if it maybe angered you, so maybe you shouldn't have that conversation until you feel level-headed and your emotion is in check. Critiquing something is a better approach than criticism, because criticism never sits well with people. But this would be a good time to have a toolbox moment, because we have to put something in our toolbox in every episode of M.A.Y.A. We're going to put criticism in our toolbox, criticism for ourselves, as well as how we interact with others when we use criticism. Criticism can be constructive. And here's what I need for you to ask yourself when you decide to turn criticism, I'd like to say, make it constructive, which makes it more like a critique. So ask if something is helpful in the way the feedback was given to you. Feedback is everything. If someone comes at you and it makes you feel stupid, if it makes you feel like you are unintelligent, if it makes you feel like you are insufficient, then chances are you're not going to get anything from it except that you were bad at something. You did a bad job. And then that negative thing sits with you. So first you have to ask yourself, because remember, this is where our objectivity IQ comes in, is, okay, I just got assessed. Someone just analyzed something that I did and it didn't come out good. Now, this is also where your EI kicks in and you're like, my emotional intelligence tells me this person was angry based on how they gave me feedback. Because constructive criticism never should come across as angry or negative. So now you have to use your EI to look at the person talking to you. Is this a boss? Is this a personal relationship? Is it a family member, a friend? How they're interacting with you by giving you the feedback will tell you a lot. So sometimes it might be a scathing indictment of the fact that they're angry, and how they're choosing to share something you did wrong has more to do about their emotion than maybe the action itself. This is when you have to really pull things in your toolbox out, okay? But ask yourself, how was it given to you? And the next question you ask yourself, if the criticism was constructive, is does it allow for you to be specific and actionable in what is being suggested? So if someone gets upset with you because, let's say, you say something they didn't like, okay? And their very not constructive criticism, which came across as anger, was like this: you just don't know how to talk to people. You're ignorant, you're rude, and they go on to proceed to tell you all these things about yourself. Okay, one, you take that situation and you say, if you're not sitting in your own emotion, because remember what we say, tap, tap, tap. Hey, feelings, I'm gonna need you to go get back there for a minute. We'll get back together. Just go back there for a minute. See what's in front of you. So if you see anger and disappointment, acknowledge the emotion that's in front of you, because now something has occurred that has elicited that emotion from that other person. So then you say, what they said is, I don't know how to talk to people. So how you then translate that when your emotional intelligence is way up here is, apparently I said something that upset them. Does that mean you don't know how to talk to people? Not necessarily. Maybe you don't always say things correctly to people. Some people totally live with this idea that I keep it 100. That doesn't mean you get to be offensive. You get more honey, bees with honey, when you say things in a way that people can understand and accept than being negative with them. And most people don't get that. But the excuse turns into, I keep it real, I keep it 100. Okay, you can do that. But do you know how to communicate that in a way that isn't offensive to people? Unless your objective is to be offensive, then it is what it is. And you have to know who you're dealing with. A lot of your work of the best version of you is knowing who you're working with, who you're dealing with. And not having high expectations from low expectation people. High value, low value. But you can have a high value relationship with somebody who has just really poor communication skills. And it makes it difficult to navigate that relationship with them. So how to know when criticism is constructive is, how is it delivered to you? And is there something in there that would allow you to change and do it better? So let's be honest, if you were yelling at someone because you were angry, then if they said, you don't know how to talk to people, then based on their interaction, they might be spot on. And that's when you're objective, you say, you're right. I was rude. I yelled at you. And I don't think I even properly got out what I was meaning to say, because I let anger lead and I let my emotions take over, opposed to being rational and just telling you how I felt about something. So you're right. I didn't talk to you correctly. Thank you for telling me that. Takes the wind out the sails. So this is that work piece that when you can step back and see that even when someone gives a scathing indictment of your behavior, is a criticism of you? Ask yourself, within that criticism, is there any inkling of truth in what they said? And that's hard to do if you're only operating from a position of emotion. So learn how to put constructive criticism in your toolbox. Learn how to give it, and learn how to be able to evaluate people and their criticism of you to determine if it really has any truth to it. Because then that's when you can be honest with yourself. Yeah, I did get a pocket. I was rude to you. I was disrespectful. Okay, I'm gonna own that. Constructive criticism, it belongs in your toolbox. Okay, everybody, let's take a break. And we come back, we'll dive into the mailbag, and we'll jump into, two more of the letters. One's a letter, one's just kind of a comment on a current situation someone asked me to speak to, and we'll go from there. You are tuned into M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition. This is episode 52. We're diving into the M.A.Y.A virtual mailbag, and you can do it as well. Just drop me a virtual letter, aka an email, at getinspired@mayakai.com. Sit tight. We'll be back right after this break.
Please stop and listen, because this important message may directly apply to you or someone dear to you. Several thousand African American former full-time CPS teachers were unfairly terminated starting in the mid-90s and continuing to the 2000s. If you are one of those many former CPS teachers who was unjustly terminated, or if you are the immediate relative of a now deceased unjustly terminated former CPS teacher, you may qualify to participate in a lawsuit at no upfront cost to you. Please call 773-580-7183 immediately for more information. That's 773-580-7183. Do not delay. Act today. because time is of the essence. That's 773-580-7183. 773-580-7183.
I can't breathe. I have migraines, numbness, weight loss. I live with it every day. The illness that I'm suffering from is an anxiety disorder, and it deserves to be treated like any other illness. But it's not.
You may not realize it, but these words, often used to describe someone with a mental health condition, can be very harmful. In a country where 1 in 5 people are affected by a mental health condition, it's time for all of us to step up and change the conversation. Just because someone's struggle isn't obvious on the outside doesn't mean they aren't hurting on the inside. We need to see the person, not the condition. Join with me, pledge to be stigma-free.
Whether you're on the go or listening on your cell phone, tablet, or laptop, you can find the show in the iTunes, Google, and iHeartRadio platforms.
With all due respect, I believe this is going to be our finest hour.
Just search M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition, and get ready to be inspired and motivated to harness your ambition.
All right, everybody, welcome back to episode 52 of M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition. In this particular episode, we were diving back into the M.A.Y.A virtual mailbag. I got a couple letters from people, and I thought, you know something? There are 4 good letters here that are totally worthy of me speaking to. So I figured, why not put some episodes, make this episode another virtual letter episode. Remember, you too can get involved if you want to send me a question, maybe based on a past episode, or let's just say maybe you're perusing something on social media and it kind of piqued your interest. And you're like, hey, kind of what's your thought about this kind of situation that's going on? Kind of what would be your insight into that? I'm more than happy to kind of address that, because I'm going to do that at the end of the show with one scenario someone threw out to me. So all you have to do is drop me a virtual letter. Just go to Get Inspired at mayakai.com, and it's an email, aka virtual letter, and I will, without a doubt, read it. If it's good enough, it might be an entire episode. If not, I might just put it together with several letters, and we'll just making a whole episode out of the letters. Either way, I may obviously respond back to you. I always respond back to everybody with some basic stuff, maybe some questions to say, hey, but remember, everything here at M.A.Y.A, this is not advice. This is clearly insight to get you thinking that maybe you do need to take a step to go see a therapist or a counselor. I tell people, the only advice you're going to get me from this show is, perhaps if any of this is resonating with you, you might want to go talk to somebody. That's the only advice you're ever going to get from me. So I'm not telling you what to do, how to do it, or when to do it, unless it involves you going to see a counselor. All right. So that's the virtual mailbag, and that's how you too can drop me a letter, and I might feature it on the show. All right. Let's jump into virtual letter number 3. And this one's an interesting one because I guarantee you everybody has been here at some point. My support system is sabotaging my self-advocacy efforts. How many times? You cannot tell me. At some point, you probably haven't experienced it. So here's what the letter read. Dear M.A.Y.A, I'm all about speaking up for myself and living my truth. I have several of your episodes have been very helpful in helping me learn ways to identify what I need to speak up and how to do it. Knowing is the beginning. She goes, I have found that when she's being truthful, that she's getting pushback and the cold shoulder from people that I felt were supposed to be my support network, specifically family and friends. I am feeling a bit angry and disappointed. What should I do? I feel my support system is sabotaging my self-advocacy efforts. Everybody has been here before. I'm going to tell you something. When you really decide to step up and speak for yourself, especially if it's something that you're not known to do, I always tell people, anticipate there's going to probably be some pushback, because that's not what people know you to do. And especially if you've been dealing with people that you've allowed to kind of always lead the way, have the last say, be the decision maker, they're not going to necessarily embrace the idea that you have found your voice and you're self-advocating for yourself. So just know that when you decide to step out and to do that, you may very well get pushback from people that you thought would embrace, celebrate, and be there with you. So let's reflect a little bit and go back to talking about self-advocacy. I'm glad I always save this illustration because it puts it into a framework that makes sense to make you understand what goes into self-advocacy, and there's no ifs, buts, ands, or questions about what exactly that it means and how to get there. It's how you choose to get there that's going to be the difference. So self-advocacy is the ability to articulate one's needs. That's the first thing. You figure it out what it is that you need. The next step in that process is you make an informed decision on what you need. Now, here's where people might kind of get into a difficult situation, because when you make an informed decision on a situation, and especially if it involves other people, it doesn't mean that someone's going to embrace what you think might be the best thing for you, especially if it's not always advantageous for them. They may not embrace what you believe the best decision is in the situation for you. But once you figure out what that informed decision is, then it's about the support that you need to meet those needs. So I'll read it again. Self-advocacy is the ability to articulate one's needs and make informed decisions about the support necessary to meet those needs. I'm gonna tell you something. A lot of people don't do well when they're taken out of their comfort zone and people start talking to them about what they need from them versus what they want to give them. I tell people one of the biggest proper sabotagers within relationships is people giving you what they want you to have versus what you need. And I'm gonna say this, it doesn't always mean that it's this malicious intent that they have. A lot of people just come to think that they know what's best for you, but ultimately it's what's best or often easy or convenient or comfortable for them. And if you've allowed a pattern of behavior to exist in your life, that you've always gone with the flow, you've never challenged things, when you decide to flip the script, you better believe people aren't going to necessarily embrace when you start speaking to what you need versus to what they're able to give you. And that's why it's really so important to think about this. Let's have our second real talk time of the show. Is your support system a default support system, or is it a chosen group of people? I'm gonna tell you what a default support system is. Your family. You're born into it. You didn't choose it. It was given to you. It was predefined and pre-selected. Now, does it mean that that particular support system was the best support system for you? Nope. And get away from the idea that blood is thicker than water. And yes, family should have your best intentions and they should want the best for you. But let's be honest, we know a lot of people where that's not the case. So the minute you've identified that your family is legitimately not a good support system for you, yes, it might hurt. But what you can't do is allow yourself to sit in that position expecting they're going to change who they are because of the idea of what family is. That's being delusional, but here's what's important. You are not living truth and you are not being honest with yourself. What you see is what you get. And a lot of people keep creating mirages around their family because the idea of family is supposed to be, this is supposed to be love. This is supposed to be support. You're supposed to have my back. What's going on? No. If you didn't get it, don't expect that you're going to get it. If it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, I'm sorry, damn it, it's a duck. And that hurts when you have to embrace the idea that your family might be your greatest enemy. And I can't say how many times I've seen this. But when you have that truth and you become honest with, I got to stop expecting them to do something different than what they always do, so then I can stop feeling disappointed. That's when you're making progress. That's when you're working on the best version of yourself. Welcome to the show, Dania Lake, one of my favorites. I totally admire her. Tell it, I try. And I try to say it in a way that's not offensive to people. Just like Danita, you can join the show and make a comment, post something in Facebook or YouTube in the comment section, and then I can actually click and share your comment on screen. I'll read it so everybody can hear it, just in case they're just listening and not watching the show. But it's true. We often give people too much power in our lives based on concepts. Family are supposed to be supportive. That's a concept. It's not necessarily always going to be factual. It's only factual if in reality it happens. Remember, a truth is an assertion that's based in truth and reality. fact and reality, rather. So if the reality is your family is not supporting and the facts keep showing you situation after situation, it doesn't happen, then the truth is you do not have a supportive family. So with that being said, don't allow them to sabotage when you finally find that inner truth and you start self-advocating and they give you pushback. The same thing exists with friends. Now, friends often become a chosen group of people. And we kind of fall into friendships in different ways. Sometimes you feel connected to people because you share a similar interest, passions, hobbies, things like that. Maybe you meet somebody and you just kind of click. Let's be honest, friendships are about how we click in our energies. But what gives a friendship real value isn't just the connection of the energy. It is the connection that is backed by intention and support. If you find your friend is never around, a friend in need is a friend indeed is a saying that runs deep and is true. If you find that when things hit the fan, there was nobody supportive for you and no one tried to help you and you call them a friend, I would ask you to reevaluate why you gave someone such a high value title when they've done nothing to earn it. We do that so frequently, and sometimes we do it fast. I've learned that just even in my own age, I'm never one to judge people. I deal in truth and fact, even when it hurts. And I had a situation where I thought somebody was really a friend and it went awry. And I was like, wow, this is messed up. And I'm still saying this is messed up because to me, it didn't have to kind of go the way that it did, but it is what it is. And I asked myself, did I place the label of friend within that situation too soon? And when I started to evaluate it, maybe I did. So be slow to put people into high value relationships. Let people start at that low value and work their way through getting to your high value realm because they do things that are congruent with what they say. If you're telling me one thing and you're doing something else, but when congruency is not there, what people say and do, then that's a red flag. That's your first red flag right there, especially when it becomes consistent. And that's what you have to be aware of. And a lot of people just act like they don't know. And then when we end up, in dire straits, then we get upset and feel like a person has misled us. No, they didn't mislead you. You allowed yourself to be, unless it was an absolute, they just hoodwinked you and you didn't see it coming. But generally speaking, with a lot of people, we can see things about them that isn't right. And we question yeah, okay. And I was guilty of my last situation with a person. There were some things that I particularly didn't care for that they would do. And it kind of made me wonder, why would you do that? But I try not to be judgmental with people. But, now I think I'm going to flip the switch in my old age when I cross over to that big 5-0 next year. I'm going to start acting like old people. Suspicious of everything. No, I'm just kidding. Old people are not suspicious of everything. Danita weighs in. Yes, she is a fellow therapist and counselor, works with trauma and crisis, which I love. She says, don't self-sabotage based on feelings of familiarity, mistaken for comfort because of the way we are used to being treated. Yes. Memory can be fantastic and it can be obviously a saving grace, but it also can be the thing, if it's comfort, that can be dangerous. And you said it spot on. Familiarity can be the thing that very much can get you in trouble. But it also can be the same thing, and Danita, thank you for sharing that can make you miss on something that's good, because maybe that familiarity is a negative thing. And then you assume everybody's going to walk like that person, talk like that person. And then someone comes into your life who legitimately is a ray of sunshine, but you can't see it because you've been blinded by the light. And you can't even see how amazing that they are because all you think of, that person's going to be awful. Now, it doesn't mean that you just say they're great, but sometimes we miss out on good things because we rely too heavily on what we know is familiar and poor. And a lot of people just gravitate. It's really interesting. So, in this letter that she said, she really felt like people were self-sabotaging. And I said, well, here's the question. Ask yourself about your support system. Is it legitimately a support system? You got to ask yourself these very important questions. If you feel like you're speaking your truth and trying to live your truth and you connected with your inner self and you're expressing this, you're getting pushback from people. It doesn't matter if that's not what they're used to. If you've taken a step in growth and people aren't willing to embrace that's who you are, then that speaks volumes about them, especially if you're moving in the right direction. So you got to ask yourself a couple really important questions. Are you expecting support because it is your family? I just talked about that. Don't expect something just because you assume it should be there because of what the word family is supposed to denote. If your family hasn't acted like a family, then stop thinking they're going to act like a family. That's just, be honest. See it for what it is. Next, Are you calling yourself friends with somebody, but really they haven't truly done anything to show you that they're a friend? And now that you're showing what you need versus what they want to give you, you're not seeing the support you thought you would get. So overall, you have to ask yourself, are your support systems proven? Do they align with your mind, spirit, and your heart? Because do those three things tell you otherwise about people? If you get that gut feeling like, something's not just right about this person, then don't ignore it. If your heart tells you that might be a nice person, but I just don't think they have my best intentions. And that's what I learned. Someone doesn't have to be a bad person to necessarily not be good by you. It's just sometimes people don't know how to be good by people because no one's ever been good to them. So that's why knowing the character that's in front of you, somebody said that last week that was listening to the show. I think it was Michael Carson. He said that. He's like, you got to know the character of the person that you're dealing with. So you're not trying to give them too much. You're not investing too much in what you expect of them, especially if they show you within the core of who they are. That's not who they are. So stop expecting to get, anything else except for what you're going to get. And a lot of people make that mistake of putting so much faith and giving people so much power over their happiness or their ability to get to where they want to be in their lives. So it's all about, if your support system is sabotaging, the first question you have to ask yourself is this really a support system? Because if it's supportive, it should not be sabotaging. And if it is, that sounds like, I'm not saying you have to disconnect from those people, but now that you've seen something that does not work for you, then you start moving towards the people who can be that support system for you. And that might take time. Finding people that legitimately are honest and true and good for us. It's not like they come in abundance all the time. It may only be one or two people. What's that song, Friends? How many of us have them? I mean, it's true. Friendships are far and few between. And it's not about the quantity of friends you have. It's the quality of the relationship that makes a difference. You may have one true blue friend, and I'll be honest, that's all you really need, because 15 others don't mean nothing if they're really not true. But we live in a world where, quantity is often pushed so heavily, not the quality of something. So evaluate your support system if you feel it's trying to sabotage anything you're trying to achieve that is positive in your life. And AKA, here's another thing. If that's also known as support sabotage. So if you find that in all your poor dealings that somehow that support network appeared to be there, well, then I would question, you need to take the word of support right out that. Because if they've been there on the negative, but they're fighting on the positive, there's nothing supportive about that. And this kind of moves really seamlessly into the virtual letter 4, the final letter of the show. And I love this. The question that the virtual letter 4 asked was this. And actually, I'll move it from a scroll. Hopefully I can get it on the screen. Yes. Okay. Virtual letter 4 asked this. Maya, what are your thoughts on Sha'Carri Richardson? She seems to be not okay despite trying to look okay. The new kind of buzzwords are, it's okay to not be okay. No, I don't think she's okay. Now, mind you, I've not sat down and had a conversation with Sha'Carri in any way, shape, or form. I'm only evaluating what I see on her outward behavior. I would tell you that she's not congruent. I would tell you I think she's very broken, hurt. But people often think I'm going to puff my chest out in my worst moment and I'm going to be strong when I'm really hurting. I'm going to tell you, support networks work in this for me because I feel like if she had the right people around her, this kind of narrative wouldn't be going on. But sometimes you could have the right people around you and people don't tend to listen. They're going to be who they are. We've seen this repeatedly with tons of celebrities who make bad choices. And you're like, why does this happen? There's been people who've told them not to do certain things and they do it anyways because they can. I've heard people say she needs to get a PR firm. It might help because maybe from a standpoint of someone talking about financial advantage and branding, maybe she would listen closer and say, look, you're harming your ability to your brand as well as to be able to make money because how you're acting is not aligned with what somebody might want to try key sponsorship to. Notice when she was banned from the Olympics for testing positive for marijuana, don't care how you feel about it. It was fair. And it doesn't matter how you feel about marijuana. Yes, it's legal, but it's a banned substance with the Olympic Committee. Matter of fact, people don't realize if you go to work and you get tested, it's still banned for your work. People don't realize that. It's legal, you can do it, But just like you can't go to work intoxicated, you're not supposed to be high on marijuana either. But hopefully no one ever gets into that. And that's kind of a different kind of situation because you'd have to be like really out of it for that to stand out. But I'm just saying, so there's still repercussions, even though marijuana is legal, it can still have repercussions. So despite the fact I felt it was sad, all I wanted to say is this: who was in her circle when she found this distressing news about her biological mother, who didn't say, no, Sakara, we're not going to do that. Because if you do that, that's going to take away your chances of going to Olympics. If you got to do something bad, go have a drink. I'm sorry. I'm going to redirect you to another negative thing to do. But I wouldn't have let her done that if I was in her circle. That's just me. So I'd ask, who's in her support system? And a lot of people are starting to question that, just watching how things are unfolding for her. So she got banned. Okay, unfortunately, there are rules or consequences. People, it's no different from, yes, it is legal to carry a gun if you have a FOID card and all the conceal and carry. But if you ever notice, there's certain places that will have on their doors that do not bring a weapon, like you can't bring a weapon like into a hospital and places like that. So yes, it's legal to carry a gun, but you can't carry a gun everywhere. So there's rules, and you need to know the rules and act accordingly. And people who struggle with that, I'm sorry. But anyways, it started with that. I understand she had a chip on her shoulder. And she had to sit through the Olympics. Here's the thing. I have no idea what she did in that time frame that she had to watch others live the dream that she was working towards, that she had almost gotten to. That alone will eat you up. So I don't know what she did during that time, how much she trained, how much she marinated in her negative emotions, probably a little too much, but she always wants to come across as confident, and I'm okay with that. So coming up on the Prefontaine, she really was, chest out, I'm back, and, changed her hair color, was ready to go. I'm not sure how much training she did. And they blew the doors off and she was last place. And then she fell back into, well, I'm the 6th fastest person in the world. And then it was like, I'm 9th, but there's nowhere to go but up. And here's the thing. I totally love the I'm not giving up, I'm not done. It's just everything that's come after it has been nothing but a landslide for her. Alice and Felix said, someone asked her how they, kind of felt. And she said nothing but heartfelt sentiment. And instead of saying thank you or just not saying anything, she went after her as if it was disingenuous. People didn't take well to that. And now it's like what's bad about this is the more she digs into this, it seems she's digging a deeper hole. And I think emotionally it can be taxing. And I always tell people emotional taxing things can really be a snowball, because I'm gonna tell you this, if she runs another race against those same people and she doesn't win, it's win or nothing. It's win or go home. And then the narrative becomes worse for her. This is why learning somehow the road to humility can be important. And I think she needs to put some different people in her circle to help her refocus where her mind is. Les, you are talented. No, you're not done. Let's walk away from the social media for a while and let's focus on our number one objective, which is getting you back in that condition so that you can compete and be the runner you feel that you are. And let's be about what we say and not just talk about it. But for a lot of people, that's hard because the spotlight's on her. So I do think she's not okay. I do. And her way of trying to combat it is coming back hard at people. It's never a good idea. But no, I don't think she realizes it's okay to not be okay. She has a lot on her plate. So I do feel sorry for her, but I also think she's taking the wrong path. But, what can I tell you? It is what it is. All right, everybody. Final thoughts. Thank you for tuning into the virtual mailbag. You too can send me a virtual letter, aka an email. Just send it to getinspired@maya.com. And of course, I can read it. I may shoot you back a couple questions to get a bit more information about what you're asking and say, hey, tune into episode so-and-so. I'm going to answer, kind of give you my thoughts on what you said. Nor am I ever giving you advice. That's not what I'm here for. It's like insight. I want to make you aware of mental wellness. I want to normalize a conversation with mental wellness. And the only advice I have for you is if you're struggling with things, if I say something in an episode that really got the wheels turning, the only advice I have for you is you should probably go talk to someone. That's how I feel about it, because this is not an exchange that would be appropriate. So it's about putting mental wellness on the table and letting you know you're not alone in your struggles. And here's a real conversation. We're going to take the taboo away, because mental wellness is like anything else. It's like taking care of your general health. If you take care of your heart, why would you not take care of your mind? And when I say a mind is a terrible thing to waste, it's not just about education. It's about the very thing that drives your emotion, your success, your physicality. It is a precious thing to waste. And you should take care of it. So that's the whole point of this podcast, is to get people comfortable with mental wellness. Final thought here from Daniela Lake. I love it. I love it. Got to have you back on. We're long overdue to have you back on the show. Daniela, with a great closing thought. I know you would agree, Maya. It's important to process cognitive distortions. Yes. And put thoughts on tail to check inaccuracy of faulty thinking. Yes. Fact check with evidence based on experiences to define the truth of the reality. Yes. Fact evaluation. I've been talking about that. So yes, cognitive distortions, it's so easy to fall into. Many episodes ago, I did one on that, about understanding how you think. If you've got faulty cognition, it's going to tend you when you make poor decisions, and you're never going to be able to deal in truth or reality because you can't deal in fact, because you're going to distort everything that comes your way. Absolutely. You're right. And that's the best thought right there. Honestly, to close the show, I couldn't do it any better than that. Well, of course, everybody, thank you for tuning into the show. Remember, the whole purpose of this podcast to help you to identify your ambitions and to harness those motivations to help you to acquire the success and satisfaction you seek in your life every day. Remember, you can always find episodes of M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition, on iTunes. You can find it on, Apple Podcast. You can find it on Spotify. You can find it on, Amazon Audibles. Pretty much, if there's a podcast platform, you can find it. Obviously, the easiest way to find it is just go to MA.com, and then all my episodes are there. Remember, with every episode, I try to add a podcast companion. So when you go to MA.com, just click on the podcast resources, go to that particular episode, and I'll throw a couple extra articles in there just to kind of give you some things that really reflect on, to go a little bit deeper than the episode went, that I think are worthy of a good read. So I always add some podcast companion things as well. Hopefully by now you have subscribed to my YouTube channel, M.A.Y.A. Just put that in, of course, go past all the Japanese anime and boom, you'll see me right there. Just like, subscribe, and share. Make sure you get social with me. You can find me on Maya_Akai at Twitter, Instagram, and at Maya Akai Presents. You can find me on Facebook. So that's all the ways you can connect. Like I said, maybe this episode wasn't something that did anything for you, but you never know. It might be something that can be life-changing for someone else. So that's why I say like, subscribe, and share. So until next time, everyone, we are our new time of 3:30 p.m. on Thursdays. That's the new time for the show. Remember, your present becomes your past, and your future is no more. So make the most of every single day. Be well. Stay safe, but absolutely more importantly, just keep being you, which is amazing. Ciao.
Get inspired, get motivated with Maya Akai and the M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition podcast.
Something that I take pride in is trying to be forward thinking, thinking outside the box, challenging myself. And as I challenge myself, hopefully I challenge you.
Find Maya on Twitter and Instagram at Maya_Akai. On Facebook at Maya Akai Presents.
We're going to talk health, wealth, fitness, mental health, financial, lots of different things that can empower you as you seek out the ambition that you're pursuing.
Or get everything Maya at MAYAAkai.com.